All right, welcome to the new JFK Show number 121. We've got Rouse and Kay once again. James Bookout is the story of the week, maybe the story of the year. So we're going to turn it over to Rouse and Kay. Dr. Fetzer, I know you're worn out. Don, I know you're worn out working 2 jobs. We're all pretty much worn out. It's 10 o'clock at night, or it's going to be soon. But, we're warriors for JFK, so we're going to go ahead and
all right, thanks.
pull it off.
Well, I can carry this, but I want you to butt in if anything comes to mind that you think would contribute. But anyway, let's go to those pictures. All right, let's go to the top left. Yeah, we can start there, okay? All right, what this is I was mentioning to the fellows that there's a woman by the name of Linda Zambanini who has a website that features pictures, photographs of all of the law enforcement people, or at least most of them, who were involved in the JFK assassination, including Dallas detectives, Dallas policemen, and federal agents, including FBI agents and Secret Service agents, things like that. And she concludes this listing on Bookout. And on the top there, what you're seeing is a collage of Bookout's SMU Law School graduation picture. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's 3 different pictures, 35, 36, and 37. But they were all taken during his tenure as a student at SMU. So it's probably his annual picture, 3 years in a row. I don't have any doubt that that's him, but what I suspect is that they doctored his eyebrows and gave him very wavy, thick eyebrows that he did not have. And after I saw that, and after I suspected that, I started researching it. And I found this site that explained that in espionage, if they want to alter a picture, that altering the eyebrows is a very effective way to camouflage somebody. And they did an experiment with celebrity pictures, and they found that just altering the eyebrow had a bigger effect on confusing a person about their identity and altering larger elements on the face or even the eyes themselves. So it's actually a very clever thing to do, to mess with the eyebrows to change a person's looks. So anyway, my point is that, yes, I think that top row, that's all Bookout, but they did alter the photograph. But on the bottom,
Ralph, maybe David Ferry and Bookout had the same guy working on that.
well, that's a good one. Yeah, doing the eyebrows, right? All right. So she's claiming that this man, and I'm going to show you in a minute that he's a very tall guy. He's sitting there, and these Dallas detectives, they were all tall guys. They towered over Oswald. They made Oswald look like he was as short as I am, and I'm quite a bit shorter than he is. So as a rule, these Dallas detectives are pretty tall, and this guy is even taller than them. So this guy was a tall guy. So if he was Bookout, Bookout was really tall, but we have reasons to believe that Bookout was actually very short. So I consider this to be a lie. But if you go to the very next image, I have something that I think will...
Well, what about the 2 at the bottom? What about the 2 at the bottom, Ralph?
Those are the 2 I'm talking about, okay? In other words, I'm accepting the 3 on the top as being genuinely Bookout, but with
the possibility of altered eyebrows.
Altering his eyes, but the ones on the bottom, one thing I'll give Linda credit for is that if you look closely, she put a question mark after Bookout. So I guess she's admitting that she's not sure it was Bookout. But here's what I want you to do. All right, so on the left, we have Bookout for sure, and on the right, we have this questionable figure. But I want you to compare their ears. On the right, this guy had a very unusual ear because the lower fleshy part of the ear, which is called the lobule, where usually the earring goes. Usually on most people, the lobule is very distinct and it sort of hangs suspended from the bottom of the ear. But if you'll notice on him, his lobule just sort of attached to his face in a web-like manner. It doesn't really look as distinct.
You mean the figure on the right, yeah.
Yeah, the figure on the right. So if you look at the lobule on the figure on the left, where it looks kind of normal.
It's not him.
On most people. But if you look on the right, where it just looks like it's, instead of coming down and just hanging like a receptacle for an earring. It just looks like it's sort of attached in a web-like manner to his face. So those are definitely not the same ear. So they're definitely not the same man. But another thing I would point out is this, is that there's supposed to be a 26-year difference between Bookout on the left and Bookout on the right. 26 years. I mean, that's more than a generation. That's more than I'm older than my own son. So what I'm saying is that the guy on the right should look quite a lot older than the guy on the left. But as I look at it, the guy on the right looks old enough to be maybe an older brother or maybe a young uncle to this guy on the left, but he does not look old enough to be his father. He does not look 26 years older than him. And Bookout was just about 50 years old at the time, and that guy on the right does not look like a 50-year-old. I would say, to me, he looks like he's maybe late 30s. He's certainly
early 40s.
Even younger.
maybe early 40s, but he does not look like a 50-year-old man. All right, go to the next picture. I'm going to show you something that's, I think, very interesting. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, so here we are now. We're at the midnight press conference, and all those guys behind Oswald are the Dallas detectives, and you see their characteristic white Stetson hat, which was their logo. And in the background, you can see some FBI agents. In the very far back, you see Special Agent Thomas Kelly. And then on the left, you see the FBI agent, Nat Pinkston. Now, the point is that the midnight press conference was very much a Dallas police affair, meaning that it was their show. The federal agents, there were a few there, but they stayed out of it. They were not front and center. They were not actually part of the show. They weren't on the stage. They were just there observing. They stayed in the background. They stayed out of the spotlight. Now, this guy here is obviously very much in the spotlight. At this moment, Oswald is looking at him. This guy was either saying something or he was about to say something, or perhaps he was even reading something, but he's in the light, he's in the center. In fact, if there's anyone who's in the center as much as Oswald, it's him. And there's no way that that an FBI agent would have been in that position because it wasn't their show. This was strictly a Dallas Police Department show. But furthermore, there's something even more riveting. If you read Bookout's testimony, he in effect says that he did not go to the midnight press conference. What happened was that the interrogator was asking him, all right, so you went to the first Oswald interrogation, which was in the afternoon on Friday. And then after that interrogation, you went to the first lineup that Oswald did. And Bookout said, yes, I went there. And then the interrogator, I think his name was Stern, asked him, well, when did you see Oswald again? And he said, well, that would be the next morning at the first interrogation on Saturday. Now, if Bookout had gone to the midnight press conference, well, he would have said, well, I saw him at the midnight press conference. And believe me, Bookout was a very chatty guy. He liked to relate everything he saw, everything he heard, everything that he heard someone say. And if he had gone to the midnight press conference, he would have wanted to talk about it. He would have mentioned it. He would have brought it up. He didn't. In fact, repeatedly, he said that he didn't see Oswald between the time of the lineup in the afternoon that started at about 4 or 4:15 on Friday and the next morning. That was it. After that, he did not see him that evening. So that made it very clear to me that it just turned out that Bookout did not even go to the midnight press conference. Anyway, she wrote Bookout there in yellow in the small print, as you can see. I put the word not in front of it. And then below that, I wrote, Bax thinks this guy looks 50, because I had made a comment that, this guy, to me, he still looks kind of very tight and athletic. He doesn't look like a middle-aged guy yet. He still looks like more of a younger guy than an older guy or a middle-aged guy. He looks a lot younger than the other men in the picture. And I just don't think for a minute that he's 50 years old. Think about something. Oswald was 24, so if this guy was 50, he was more than twice Oswald's age and old enough to be Oswald's father. And I don't think that
I'd make him around 35, Ralph.
yeah, 35, maybe late 30s, but that's about it.
Not older than that. No.
All right, so let's go to the next.
Yeah, is that Lavelle right there?
It might be, actually. It looks like it could be Lavelle.
Yeah, I think
It sure does.
Lavelle. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Oh, wait a second. Let me make sure what I want next. Okay, no, wait a second. What I want next is go down a little bit. There's some testimony here that's really cute by Hosty. It says Hosty excerpt. Let's see how that shows. This is funny. Now, I'm not going to just read. Well, I'll just tell you what it says. But if you want to take the time to read it, what you can. But what he says is that he was late getting to the first interrogation of Oswald, which was at 2:15 p.m. Friday afternoon. Bookout got there before he did, and Bookout was worried that he was going to miss it. So Bookout was in the hallway outside the office, and it was crowded with reporters and newsmen and cameramen. It was just jammed. So he was looking for Hosty. So what he did was he got some type of a pedestal to stand on so he could look over the crowd and find Hosty, and he did. Let me see if I can. It says here, Bookout was standing in the doorway on some sort of pedestal so that he could see above the crowd. And then when I saw that he was waving for me to join him, I started pushing my way through the mob. All right, so this tells you that he was a short guy. If he had to find a pedestal to stand on in order to see above the others, in order to locate Hosty, you know that he was a short guy. Okay, now let's go back to the list. All right, go back up now to the next one that we were going to get to. All right, this one, no, above there. There you go. Okay. So this is another picture of the guy that Linda is pegging as being Bookout, which I think is ridiculous. Again, he doesn't look like a 50-year-old man or anything close to it. And then I wrote up here on the upper left, help, anyone got a pedestal? I can't see. The idea that that tall guy would have had to get a pedestal in order to find Hosty is just ridiculous. He's the tallest one in the room. I mean, he's towering over most of the others, and he's just absolutely the tallest one there. The idea that he would have needed a pedestal in order to find Hosty.
So Ralph, who is pushing the idea that this is Bookout, this tall guy?
All right, the one who's pushing the idea, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Linda Zambonini is pushing it, but the one who's like now taking the ball and really running with it and pushing with it is Joseph Bax, my nemesis, the guy who's, fighting me tooth and nail all the time in the most vicious way possible. He's putting up this image over and over again saying that this is Bookout. And the only thing that he's got to base it on is that Linda claimed it before he did. He's got nothing else. There's no other substantiation. There's no other corroboration that this guy is Bookout. I already showed you that his ear doesn't match Bookout. And now that we know for sure that Bookout was a short guy, it makes
This is clearly not Bookout, Ralph.
that is clearly not Bookout. So in other words, I think at this point I have to think that they're lying through their teeth because they don't want to admit that Bookout was very short.
Linda's making an innocent mistake and Backy's is running with her.
That's it, basically it. Okay, let's go on.
Yes, it's like the difference between Paul and Paul.
Let me go back to the thing. I'll tell you what I want next now. Let me show you first.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
I got a question though.
What I want you to do next is go down to this group picture. It's down here. That where you see all these cadets. Higher.
Cadets.
There you go. That's it. Okay. All right. Okay. Now this is another group picture of Bookout from when he was a cadet in some type of a police cadet program. I don't know exactly what his age was, whether it was college or high school or what. but it might have been some type.
I'm just going to guess top left or front right.
Front
All
middle.
right. Okay. Now here's what I'm going to explain to you. According to Linda Zambanini, the front right corresponds to Bookout. That is him on the front right. But here's what happened. There's a man I'm not going to name because he's been helping us. He's been a huge help to us, but he's a little bit afraid. He knows that people like me have been targeted with some pretty nasty stuff. And he's just afraid, for reasons that he's given me that I don't want to repeat, that they're going to go after him. So he just does not.
Yeah, he's not eager to be offed.
That's right. So, but he started having his doubts about that guy on the right, and primarily because of his height.
Yeah.
Primarily because of his height, where he seems to be one of the taller guys there. So what happened was he started looking at this very short figure in the center here, who is the shortest guy in the group, and began comparing his image to Bookout's, and then he had a bingo moment where he really decided that this guy was Bookout.
That's who I thought it was at first guess, was the guy in the middle there.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Let's go to the next picture now. Go back to the group. All right, go down to this next one here.
Right there?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Go ahead. That's it. Okay. All right. Now, this is, so in other words, on the left would be like high school, and then on the right would be when he was in law school. So you're talking about some years of difference in between. His face is even fatter, you might say, on the left, but weight fluctuates. Maybe he got older and decided he wanted to get in shape for the girls. He lost a little weight, but
Or in college.
basically I want you to just notice that the basic configuration does look pretty darn good, that they could be the same guy. Now, even though it's a blurry picture, if we're right, and I agree with this friend of ours that we are right, if we're right, then it does confirm that the drag queen eyebrows are bullshit, because he doesn't have them on the left. And I'll tell you something, ever since I saw that, I did a little bit of research into the shape of eyebrows. And basically what they say about eyebrows when you read the anatomy books is that in general, there's just two basic shapes. One is to have just generally an oval shape where it's just sort of gently rounded above the eye. And the other possibility is to just have a pretty straight eyebrow, so where it's just going straight across the eye. And they fluctuate within that range. But the number of people that are actually born with an S-shaped eyebrow in the way that we see on the right is so small that it's statistically non-existent. So I do believe that that's artificial, what we see on the right. Let's go to the next picture now, and this was made by our friend. Where is it now? It says trifecta. See where it says trifecta collage? Yeah. Okay. All right. So this was made by our friend, and so we have this young cadet on the left, and then we have the law school student on the right. And then we have the Ruby impostor on the far right. So all right, so this guy is in the middle. And I didn't bring this. He also made a GIF, a moving file, in which this face on the left transforms into the face of the trifecta guy on the right. And it's pretty darn good the way it's rather seamlessly transitions. Now, there's only one thing about this photo on the left that gives me pause. I wasn't sure I was going to mention it, but I guess I will. And it's a very interesting thing. But one of the characteristics of Bookout that we know is true is that he had a very narrow nose and very pinched nostrils. And this is one of the things that distinguished him from Ruby, who had a more broad nose and wider nostrils. Now, on the left here, and it's a little hard to see because the picture is blurry and the image of his nose is small, but it's a very straight-on shot. Basically, we're looking straight at him. And if you try with all your might to just look at where the center of his nose is, where the actual, tip of his nose is, I want you to notice, if you will, that we're seeing a very wide expanse of nose to our right of center, and a very, very narrow expanse of nose to the left of center. It's almost like we're seeing a lot more of his nostril on our right than we are on our left. Can you see that? There's just a big spread going to the right and to the left. And that would be normal if you were looking at him angularly. If you were really looking at him from the side, you would see the nostril that was exposed to you and the one. But we're seeing him straight on here. We really should see a more balanced look. And then the other thing is that.
Well, Ralph, maybe you got in a fight in college or something.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Don, because the other thing is that the coloring of the nose, where the tip of the nose looks very blanched, and then when you get up to the bridge of the nose, it looks very dark. Anyway, my point is that I have the suspicion that they played around with that nose to try to make it look broader so that it wouldn't be as narrow as the nose that we see on...
Yeah, that looks very unnatural. Either he has a broken nose.
Right. His nose looks broken. It really does look broken. It almost looks like, I don't know, it's like it's fractured right on top there. It does not look photographically right. I think that they messed with it, and I think that they tried to hide the fact that he had this very, very narrow nose. All right, now go back to the list, because I've got something to show you.
I was going to say, before you go on, my buddy in high school, in 8th grade, his nose was perfectly straight, but by the time we got to 10th grade, that thing was going at a different angle.
Well, yeah, in the nose, I go to where it says find a grave. It says find a grave. Okay, all right, go to find a grave. Okay. All right, now look there's this site that where basically they have it's just a kind of like a bio of the guy, and it tells you where he's buried, and it's called findagrave.com, and if you join the site, you're allowed to basically contribute, and apparently anybody can contribute anything they want. And all of this site here was done, well, until today, it was all done by this Linda Zabanini. She's the one who did it. And what I noticed about it is that she ended up putting all these bogus images of Bookout. On the right, she's got the image of the tall guy from the midnight press conference, where she even admitted with a question mark that she wasn't sure that was Bookout. And here she is, she's putting it here. Why would she put that image when it's not at all certain that was Bookout? And then she put twice the image of the tall guy from the Cadet photo.
Ralph, just, maybe I missed something, but has she had any contact with Bookout's family, or she's just posting this stuff willy-nilly?
I think, as far as I know, she's just posting it willy-nilly. I haven't heard that she has any contact with his family. I know that Bookout's wife is no longer living. He has a son whose name is also James, who apparently lives in Dallas. I would like to contact him and just ask him a simple question. What was your father's height? Now, at this point in time, he may know about what I'm doing.
Ralph, I find it very suspicious that she's taking such an active role with regard to this specific memorial site. I find that very strange.
Yeah, this is all brand new stuff. So how could, in other words, that was my question, Ralph. Are you getting pushback already when this is only basically a week old?
Oh, I'm getting pushed back hard. But notice at the very top, I joined this site. It doesn't cost anything to join. And I submitted the top one. And this is an inactive site, but if you were on the site and you were seeing that picture, and you can see it says my name added by Ralph Sinke, but if you clicked on the picture, it would go to a caption. And in the caption, I criticized her, and I said, you know, she submitted that image of the man at the midnight press conference, but we have testimony from Bookout that he did not attend the midnight press conference. And I also mentioned that we also have evidence that he was not a tall man, and this man was an unusually tall man. He was unexceedingly tall at that press conference.
This just seems to me an awful lot of interest by Linda in a very obscure figure.
And I happen to know at this point that Linda knows about me. She knows what I'm doing. Now, in a nice way, I have tried to contact her. She has a Facebook page. I went to her page. I sent her a message. I wasn't insulting. I was polite. She has refused to respond. And
I think that's very suspicious.
of course it is. And she ended up making a derogatory comment about me to Bax, which he posted. So yeah, they're all in it together. Let's go back to the
Isn't it Backies? I always thought his name was Joe Backies.
Well, I don't think he's worthy of 2 syllables. It's not worth my effort. I call him Bax.
All right.
That's all he gets from me. Okay, let's go. Let's see now. Let me. Let's. We did the Hosky. Let's go down a bit more. Yeah.
I think there's some up above we haven't done, Ralph.
Yeah, all right, yeah, let's do some, all right, here's what I want to do next. Go to this one right here with the circle. That one right there, okay. Now this is really, really interesting. I have just gotten into this since the last time we did a show together. But you'll notice on the left, you see the guy with the microphone. That is Tom Pettit. He was the main NBC reporter at the Oswald shooting. He's in that white trench coat, and they're waiting here for them to come out with Oswald.
See, I would never have confused this guy in the white circle with Jack Ruby.
Well, okay, wait a second. To this day, they claim that that is Jack Ruby. And when I found out that they're claiming that that is Jack Ruby, I almost soiled my pants. It was just such a shock that they would claim that. First of all, he wasn't that tall. He wasn't that scraggly in the face. There's another thing I want to point out. Look at it closely. Do you notice that this guy's got a beveled sideburn? Do you see how his sideburn is kind of angular cut?
Look at that ear.
Where it almost,
Yeah.
look how deformed his ear
Well,
looks.
the ear seems to be distorted, but look
Yes,
at
it's
the cut
very,
of
very
look at the cut of the hair at the
Now,
back.
I know, like I said, I was kind of rushed at the end because I knew we had a deadline to get on. I didn't bring it, but I have a collage of this guy and Ruby, and the ears look nothing like each other. It so happened that at the time, Ruby had a very thick, square, rectangular sideburn that grew all the way to his ear. He didn't have that huge gap. He did not have a pointed sideburn. There's simply no way. But wait a second. Here's the main thing that jumped out at me. What the heck is covering this guy's eye? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, it's not sunglasses, even though you think it is, and a lot of people claim that. So
Yeah,
when
well,
we had our comments, the comments on last show, that was the first thing that they came at. And I had to go ahead and close the comments because we had 500 thumbs down and 2 thumbs up with only 100 views.
Okay. Okay. Well, look at it very closely.
Well, but Gary, what
Yeah.
do you make of that? That's very peculiar. In other words,
Okay, well,
they were trying to challenge the very idea of Ralph's identification of the shooter not being Lee Oswald. Was that for?
What happens is, in other words, when I put out this show, I purposely left out Ralph's name.
Yeah.
All right. But once they found out Ralph was in the show, then this robo thumbs down. I mean, you can't have 500 thumbs down.
Right.
Well, look, here's what I want you guys to notice here. Look at the bridge of his nose. Do you see that shadow that looks like it's crossing the bridge of the nose? You see that little line there? You see, it's just going right across his nose, just like
Yeah.
a bar. It's a bar, a dark bar. Well, what that is, look at me now. What that's supposed to be, and I looked it up, you know, the parts of sunglasses, they call that the bridge of the sun.
Right.
And the bridge of the sunglass goes over the bridge of the nose. And that's what that is supposed to be. Now, if you look at his ear very closely, I think that you'll see what appears to be a very faint arm of the glass. And I looked it up. They don't call this an arm. They actually call it a temple. That's the technical name for the arm of a pair of glasses, is that they call it the temple, I guess because it goes over the temple. But to me, it looks like there's a little bit of temple showing there in front of the ear and also behind the ear.
Yeah.
So I think it's supposed to be sunglasses. But
Well, I'll just tell you, this photograph is definitive proof that the shooter was not Jack Ruby.
okay, now listen. People are what people are trying to tell me though today. Some of them are realizing, okay, well, see, here's what happened. If you look at the Jackson photo, the most famous photo of Ruby shooting in the world, the one taken by Robert Jackson, you see Ruby in quotes in front of Oswald with a gun stuck out,
But from behind.
And if you look at his coat jacket, you see a pair of glasses in it, but they're not sunglasses. They're regular glasses. They have clear lenses. They're sitting in the jacket pocket. So apparently the shooter had glasses all right, but they were not sunglasses.
I'd say in all probability, this was an alteration to conceal the eyes.
Yes, exactly. Now here's what that's Jim just nailed it. Basically, this is not Ruby. It was somebody else, but they wanted to claim that he was Ruby. So they put that over his eye, really as a form of photographic shadow, not real shadow,
Sure.
photographic shadow, so that it would hide enough of his face and his eyes so that we can't see that he really isn't Ruby. So
Yeah.
I've got all these people telling me that that's shadow. And my response to them was to give them a lesson in physics about what causes a shadow. And what causes a shadow is that there's an object that is between the source of the light and the surface that has the shadow. And the object that is basically blocking the light to the surface is what casts the shadow. And therefore,
Well, I just gotta tell you, I love your perseverance, your ingenuity, your imagination. This is such wonderful stuff. And look, Ralph, it's historic.
Oh, well, thank you, Jim. But anyway, the point is that there is no object that could be casting a perfectly, not round, but kind of elliptical shaped shadow over the guy's eye. What object could be doing that and then adding a bridge over his nose? I mean, it's ridiculous to say that that's a shadow, and it's also ridiculous to say that it's an eyeglass because the shooter didn't have sunglasses. And it's ridiculous to think that he would have been wearing them in that situation. So this is totally bogus.
See, Ralph, these are all issues they never wanted to confront. They thought they'd finessed all of this by the immediate identification, putting his head in a sack and all the other nonsense. And then you're rediscovering this after all these years is simply dumbfounding.
Well, just think it's been 53 years. Bookout. He died lucky because he died in 2009 and he died blissfully thinking that he got away with this. But if there's an afterlife, wherever he is, I hope he knows that we got him. He didn't get away with it. All right, go back to the list. I got.
This is by far your most important photograph.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay.
What about this one?
Let's go look at that one real fast. So anyway, this is an enlargement of it. So you can just see that now you can really see that bridge over his nose. And they were just trying to create
That was added too, right? That's part of the deception.
Right.
Yeah.
It's obviously meant to be a sunglass, but it's absolutely ridiculous to think that he was wearing them.
He looks like Mr. Potato Head.
They should have tried something else. Anyway, go back
looks
to
like, it's a straight, that horizontal line is like really straight and clear, and it goes right into a blob. Now, that's not a sunglass. How could...
Well, actually, you're right. It's too straight to even be it. But you know, when you're doing something like this, you wind up doing crude things. You know, you can't fake things that realistically. You know, you have to do them crude.
This one here?
No, have we done that one already?
Yet.
Oh yeah, let's go to this one here. Yeah, let's go to this one here. This is the coup de grace. Okay. All right. Now this is Oswald, and on the right is the shooter. We're seeing his face at an angle, and you notice that he looks like he's short. He doesn't look as tall as that other man who was pretty darn tall.
But Lee's looking right at him.
He's looking down.
He's looking right at him. Absolutely, Lee is looking right at him. And let's remember something. He would not be looking at him unless he knew him. You don't look at strangers like that. He'd have no reason to look at a stranger. So he knew this guy, and he knew Bookout. He spent 2 days with Bookout, and he knew him. But here's the main thing I want you to see here. That we're seeing this guy's face, you know, in a profile, so to speak. But if he was wearing sunglasses or any kind of glasses, the rim of, you know, the frame of the glass would be sticking out, so we would at least see the edge of it.
Yeah, sure.
It's
Good.
very clear here that this man is not wearing
Good one, right?
glasses,
Good
and therefore that other guy in the glasses. And if anybody tries to tell me that the guy whipped him off in that split second,
Right.
I mean, that's just helping yourself to
That's called grasping after straws.
This is yet another Ruby imposter. So Bookout was a Ruby imposter, and now they're brandishing this other guy into a Ruby imposter. So it never ends when it comes to the fake.
Well, wait a minute. Don't. This is the same person, isn't it, that we saw with the dark glasses?
No, it's not. That's
No.
the point. This is Bookout. This really is
That's
Bookout.
Bookout around ready to shoot him.
He's shorter, and he's much shorter. I mean, look how low.
This does look like whoever is about to shoot Lee.
This is the guy that is about to shoot Lee. Definitely
Yeah.
is. He's not the other guy. He's not Ruby. He's Bookout. Okay, go back to the other now. All right, I've only got a couple left, and these are basically for comic relief. We want to entertain our audience here. Let's see. Let's go to the one on the left, the penguin collage. I call this the penguin collage. You see the penguins below. Okay. Now, the point of it is that all these cops, all these tough cops, they went after Ruby like a herd of penguins. Now, I don't know if you ever saw the film March of the Penguins. It's fascinating, but it's about the lives of these emperor penguins. But in the winter, in the Antarctic winter, when they're hovering in like minus 90-degree temperatures, and these are all males here. These are all male penguins, and they're standing there, and each one of them is holding an egg between his feet. He's actually got them sitting on the dorsal surface of his feet, an egg that's incubating. And they have to stand there and just stand in the cold and not drop that egg. The females, the mothers, have already gone back to sea to feed, but they're standing there. And when it gets really, really cold, they hover together in a herd because, you know, it conserves heat and they keep each other warm. So that's what these guys reminded me of, the way that they went about subduing Ruby. Now let's think about it a second. They've got this guy. They've disarmed him. Graves grabbed the arm with the gun, and you see him taking the gun away from Ruby. So what's the first thing
The pseudo Ruby.
Pseudo Ruby, right? Pseudo Ruby. Now the first thing that cops are going to do in order to subdue a guy like that is to handcuff him. They're going to push him down to the ground. They're going to put his arms behind his back. And somebody's going to take out a pair of handcuffs, and they're going to cuff him. And once they've cuffed him, it's over. He's been neutralized. He's been fine.
Ralph, we should get some, maybe we should get on YouTube sometime, get some video of police actually arresting a suspect.
You know something I have done, I don't have it here, but I do have a set of images of police subduing hostile culprits, and that's always what they do. Push them down, face down to the ground.
And they get those hands behind the back.
And then they cuff him. And after they cuff him, now they can stand him up. He's harmless now. He's got, you know, the fight's taken out of him. It's going to be pointless for him to resist anymore. But what we are expected to believe is that instead of doing that these cops grab and get control of Ruby, and then they dance him into the building like a bunch of penguins hovering around, because that's what happens with these penguins. They end up kind of dancing because the penguins in the middle are a lot warmer than the ones on the outside, and they want to be fair about it and give everybody a chance to get the most benefit. So they kind of do this dance where they keep rotating and moving the group around so that they take turns being on the outside. So anyway, that's what it reminded me. And so what they end up doing is somehow dancing him into the building without cuffing him.
Yeah, it's not an arrest, it's a concealment.
It's a concealment. They're not really trying to hurt him. They're not struggling with him. They're not fighting with him. What they're trying to do is cover him up to get him out of the area so that the cameras and the people
don't see him. Yep.
Now, there's another thing I want to bring up here that I think is fascinating to consider. And again, I have images of it. I just didn't have time to do it. But we'll do another show in the future, and I'll show you what I mean. But I have a picture of this cubbyhole when it's empty. No, it's not in the group. Just stay here. No, just stay here.
Okay.
No,
Just stay there?
Don't go away. Just stay there. Just stay there. But you realize that, let me just describe the situation for you. Basically, what this consists of is basically just a small cubby hole that has access to the police building. And this cubby hole leads to a ramp which is perpendicular to the cubby hole. And the ramp goes to the street. It goes to Main Street on one side, I guess, and Commerce on the other. So you've got this ramp, and then you've got this cubby hole. And in the cubby hole, you've got two sets of doors. You've got a set of double doors, which are against the back wall, which were not used. So they might as well not be there. And then there's a single door that is on the right in the corner. And that's the door they used. It's the door they used to bring Oswald out. It's also the door they used to bring Oswald back in. And it's also the door they used to bring so-called Ruby back in. All right, so the shot goes off. Oswald goes down. This scuffle takes place where they're doing everything they can to hide Ruby. But then somehow, in a period of 10 seconds or less, they are going to get Ruby. This mob of penguins is going to get Ruby through that tiny door all together. They're going to get him through it. And at the same time, three men are going to be moving through the same door at the same time. And the three men are Lavelle and Oswald, who, of course, is sprawled horizontally because he's been shot and he's being carried. And then a third man who is also, in other words, Lavelle, well, the other man got his arms, and then the other man got his legs. So they're carrying him that way into the building. And then these guys are moving in a herd-like manner, Ruby, into the building. And they're converging, and yet somehow all of them are getting through this single door at the same time. And they manage to clear that space in about 10 seconds or less. Now that's pretty unbelievable in itself. But then in addition to that, even though you've got cameramen right, left, and also behind, because there was one cameraman who was shooting from the door, and that was Bill Lord, who worked for WFAA, which is the local Dallas station. He was shooting from behind. So they had cameras pointing at this from all directions, and yet somehow not a single footage caught a single frame of Oswald being carried into the building or where you can see Ruby being carried into the building. All we see is frenzy, chaos, pandemonium, commotion, blah, 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 blah. All we see is these noisy images of cops running around and everything looking frantic and people getting in the way of the camera so you can't see anything. And we never see anything important. Now, you would think that if there was a real cameraman there who was trying to capture the action, they would hone in on Oswald because, you know, is he alive? Is he dead? They would really make an effort to see him with a camera. And then secondly, you would want to see, you know, the guy who did it and what's happening with him, but we don't see any of it. It's all noise, commotion, frenzy, chaos. In fact, I didn't bring it, but this is another funny image that I should have brought next time. And that is that the announcer, Tom Pettit, he makes a statement. He says, detectives have got their guns drawn. And when he said that, I said to myself, well, you know, that's funny because I don't see any guns being drawn.
No.
But finally, at the end, the closest thing to a gun being drawn that I see is I see one detective take his right hand and he just puts his hand over his gun as though he might draw it. But at that point in time, Oswald was already gone, Ruby was already gone, and essentially the danger was already gone. So he puts his hand over his gun, and then he takes it away, and he never draws it. That's the closest that anybody comes. So why did Pettit say that detectives have their guns drawn? There is no evidence of any detective.
I assert with high probability Pettit was in on it. He couldn't have afforded to be in that position unless he was one of them. So
Well, I give that a very high probability.
This seems to me to be one of the many illustrations of the CIA controlling the media and having key players in key positions at key times.
All right, I go to the image. I don't know, maybe the last one. Let me see here.
Hey, before you go to that one, Ralph, just a quick question. To me, like, you know, we talked about that last week where that whole scuffle looks choreographed.
Oh, yes.
Rehearsed.
Oh, listen, I'm glad you brought that up, Don. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we have any, they would have had to have rehearsed that at some point or other. Do we have any?
Well, I'm very open to the possibility that they rehearsed. Now, something I did today that I think is very important is that I tried to find in any of the footages, and I looked in all of them, a frame in the film that looked in any way like the Bob Jackson photo that's so famous. And I came away realizing that there is no such frame. You cannot find it in any of the footages. There's no film that you can watch and say, aha, that's when Jackson took his photo. You just don't find it.
So could this be from the rehearsal, Ralph? Could that be from the rehearsal? That's
what I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe the whole Jackson photo was from the rehearsal. Anyway, let's go here. This is the last one I brought, and it's all for comic relief. You know, we've got to send them away with a laugh. Isn't that what they say? But on the left here, we were looking at the penguin photo where they're fighting tooth and nail, you know, arms are blazing, you know, trying to control this wild man, Jack Ruby, dragging him against his will into the building. And then about 1 to 2 minutes later, on the right here, we have what I call the say cheese photo. That things settle down so fast between these former combatants that now they're perfectly capable of taking a photograph where they're not even looking at him, where they're content to just look at the camera and everybody just, cheese!
Ralph. Just as when they photographed Lee, they took off his shirt so he wouldn't look like he actually looked either as doorman or when he was arrested. Here, they've taken off his jacket. So you'll no longer be inclined to think this could possibly be the same person.
Well, that's interesting too. But you know, the thing about this is when you consider how confrontative and just how really really wild and seemingly combative this whole spectacle was here on the left. The idea that it could settle down into this very placid, totally And look at this man in the middle there. Does he look like a man who 60 seconds ago was, flinging akimbo his arms and just struggling with all these cops? He looks like the most gentle soul that there ever was.
And they took away his hat and his tie.
And the thing is that, tempers don't settle quite that fast. Things don't settle down. It takes a little time for the transition to take place. This is just a little bit too fast. Now, I've been wondering for a very long time how this picture got taken. I mean, I can't believe that they really wanted to take a picture of Bookout. I mean, at this point in time, they had Ruby somewhere, and I presume that what they were really trying to do was get this guy out of there, to just get him away. But I'm thinking that what happened was that they just ran into somebody. They might have ran into a reporter that insisted on taking a picture, and they just couldn't think of a reason to say no. And you can see that this guy here on the left, this cop, doesn't look very happy about taking the picture. To me, he looks pretty uneasy about taking this picture. And our friend, the one whose name I don't want to mention, he mentioned to me that when you actually see this in the film compilation in which we found it, which was a 1993 retrospective called The Killing of Lee Harvey Oswald, which was made by the same producer who made the original live footage of Oswald being killed, a man named Frederick Reinstein, that in the clip, they're very clever about how they squeeze him into it. What they do is they show an image of the real Ruby being led down a hallway. It's really Jack Ruby, and it's all light, it's all lit up. He's in handcuffs, and they're leading him down the hallway, and then they lead him through a door into an office. Then they get to this photo, except when they get to it, and the implication is, well, this is him on the other side of the office. But the implication of it is that, there's maybe a second or so between it. In other words, and they do this a lot in the JFK footages, in which they splice together images that they want you to think are continuous, but really they are totally.
Well, this is a backup photograph. If somebody wanted to claim, this just to show this man cannot be the man who shot him. Ruby's down the hallway. Here he is. He doesn't even have a jacket, a hat.
When they first get to this image in the movie, in this compilation, in this retrospective, it's extremely dark. It is so dark that it's the darkest thing. I mean, if it was any darker, it would just be a picture of a black cat in a coal mine at midnight. It is so dark that you can hardly make out anything or anyone. You barely see an outline of anybody. And then they're talking about him. And then just before they leave, what they do is they just flash this up in light for a split second. And I mean a split second that is so fast that it was very hard to even.
Wouldn't it be a flash? Wouldn't that be a flash bulb, Ralph?
Yeah, well, almost like it was a flash bulb. But here's the thing, though. Why would anybody have taken that footage in the dark to begin with? I mean, they would have had light. There would have been some light in the hall. They would have had light on the camera. They had flashes. In other words, they would have taken a useful picture. So in other words, the whole idea of the dark picture is artificial to begin with. And then in the film, what they did was they just gave you a look at him. But the way they did it was it went so fast that you didn't really have time to study it at all. All you got was a flash. So the way I got this was that if you go on the Chrome browser, you can slow the speed down to 1/4 normal speed. So I stopped. So I had it going at 1/4 speed, and then it got to the frame where it was lit up, and I was able to stop it. And then I just did a screen save, and I pushed it into Paint, and then I was able to just get the lit up screen. So that's how I got this. They didn't want me to get it. They didn't want anybody to get it. Because they knew that if anybody got it and studied it, they would realize that the guy is not Ruby. His face is too round to be Ruby. His nose is too narrow to be.
Well, correct me, Ralph. Then is this supposed to be the man they apprehended?
This is supposed to be the guy.
This is supposed to be the man they apprehended as the shooter of Oswald.
Yes, that's who this is supposed to be.
Well, no wonder they didn't want it to be taken.
They didn't really want it to be taken, but then for some reason they put it in the retrospective. But they were clever about it. They only gave us a split second to see him. And mostly they showed us in the dark. And they probably figured that most people would, well, not just most people, but that all people would never actually register and think and consider that he wasn't Ruby. But he really isn't Ruby. He wasn't Ruby.
It's obvious he isn't Ruby. I'm fascinated by this.
Another thing I point out is that he has a relatively short forehead. He just did. He had maybe you could say a low hairline, but he had a very short forehead. The distance from the bridge of his nose to where his hair started, and Ruby's was much longer. And I have it actually measured where you can see that Ruby. So there's no chance. There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that he was Jack Ruby. But here they are, posing him as Ruby, and there is just no doubt that he is not Ruby, and there's also no doubt that he is Bookout. Well, anyway, guys, that's all I have for tonight. But listen, let's do another show or so in a week, because I do have a few other images that I can show you that I think will be interesting, for your viewers. But I want you to know this is being very well received. The Oswald Innocence Campaign website went for the first time above 1,000 likes tonight on Facebook. It was only around 600 a couple weeks ago. So we have been inundated with likes, hundreds of likes, because of what people have seen about this discovery of Bookout as the real shooter of Oswald in the garage. So it's very big. It is huge. There's no doubt about it. I want to thank the man who's been helping me, who I don't want to name. And we're going to keep going with this.
Call him X.
The
nameless man. The nameless man. Sensational work, Ralph.
Okay.
Yeah. Find a comment there, Don.
I was going to say, we'll just call him Man X.
Man X. All right, Man X.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is just so big, and I am just going to keep hitting it because they are bleeding from the eye on this, and we're going to just cut wide open. So
it draws the government in an open way into the whole assassination and cover-up.
Just think about it. In other words, what we know now is that an agent of the U.S. government is the one who shot Oswald. Now, if the U.S. government shot Oswald,
who was an informant for the government itself, too.
Yeah, the government the government agent shot a government informant.
That's right.
There you go. Well, that's a good point. An agent is shooting an agent, right?
Yeah, in another government building, in the basement of another government building.
Look, we all know.
Surrounded by government officials.
We know that Oswald knew Hosty. As soon as he saw him at that meeting, he says, where'd you get the nerve going to visit my wife? You got something to say about me, you come and talk to me. You don't go talking to my wife. And I'll tell you something else, and I just thought about this in the last week. But Hosty was that very first interrogation. It was the last one he went to. And I know why. It's because they realized that he was irritating Oswald. And so they figured, well, all right, we'll leave him home. We're not going to take him anymore. So Bookout became the one who replaced Hosty. And why? Because Bookout and Oswald got along. We have a picture of them talking in the hallway. And it was a conversation that Oswald started. He goes up to him and asks him something. So obviously Bookout, and I'm very open to the possibility that maybe Bookout and Oswald knew each other before the assassination. Maybe Bookout was a contact that Oswald had in the FBI, because we know he had FBI contacts. Maybe they knew each other from even before the assassination. So, the way Oswald glanced at him before this.
Yeah, it looked like he knew him. Yeah.
tells me that, yeah, they knew each other. They knew each
All
other.
right,
This is
fellas.
sensational, and we look forward to having you back, Gary.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it, man. Good night.
All right, this has been
Thank you very
JFK
much.
Show number 121 with Rouse and K Part 2, James Bookout. We're really just bringing up new information on a weekly basis now, so stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be more information next week.